Yo, what's up? Welcome to Ruby Cinders. This is Jimmy, the co-owner, and this is another Freestyle, a show where I just basically just word vomit crap that's coming out of my head about different things that I'm really into. Um, so this is episode 4, even though technically we've had 4 that I released, but part 3 was a 2-parter. So, and speaking of parts, today I'm going to be talking about Friday the 13th, the series. Well, no, not the series, not the TV show, the movie series. So, if you want to support us and what we do and help us expand into other types of content, please shop at our shop. Please stop by our shop, rubycinders.com, or shop on Instagram or Facebook. Or if you're in Tallahassee, come in our shop. We actually have a physical location, and there you can buy this nifty t-shirt right here in honor of today's episode, or this fancy mug in honor of today's episode, or you can buy this nifty hat, which we won't be talking about Mario today, but maybe in a future episode. Today we're going to be covering Friday the 13th, as I said. I'm a huge horror fan, and it is one of my all-time favorite series. We're going to be this is going to be a multi-part episode, or I guess this will probably be its own arc that we'll revisit throughout the season, if there is going to be a season. I'm calling this season 1. So, but each successive episode isn't going to be about Friday the 13th. I'll space them out. So, let's dive into it, right? Like I said, this is just stream of consciousness off the top of my head. I didn't write shit. I'm just going to go off of memory about the movie series, and each episode that deals with just any topic is going to be about that. Is going to be in that style, so to speak. Hence the name Freestyle. Anyway, I keep repeating myself, so I'm sure future Jimmy is going to give me shit for it as well, because we don't want this to be repetitive and boring. So anyway, let's launch into it again. Friday the 13th, Part 1. So, I didn't see it when it came out. Obviously, I was a fucking baby when the movie came out. I was born in 79, so, yeah. So, I was a baby when it came out. And I actually didn't see it until I was an adult in the, I want to say, late 90s, like 99 or 2000, I think is when I first watched it in its entirety. As a kid, I watched the series with the exception of a few in just chunks, because as I had mentioned before, I was privileged enough to be raised middle class, so I had cable in my bedroom, and HBO and Showtime. For some strange reason, my parents thought that was a good idea, which I'm very happy they thought that was a good idea, because I got to see a lot of cool shit that they probably wouldn't have approved of. I had a bedtime, so they probably didn't think I was going to be watching, rated R movies and stuff like that. But on the weekends, I just stayed up past my bedtime without them knowing. So anyway, Friday the 13th, Part 1. It's a classic now, obviously, and it established many tropes in the horror movie field. The styles of deaths. Tom Savini's work on that was groundbreaking for its time. And it really held up for a long time, for decades, I would say. The death scenes in that particular movie in Part 1 held up. I would say probably until the advent of HD, where things got obviously more clear, so then you could actually see the spaces between where the latex ended and the skin began and things like that. But when things were not HD, even when I bought the movie in like 99 or something like that on VHS and watched it, it still held up. largely, as far as the death scenes. So spoiler alert, for a movie that's over 40 years old, I am going to be going into, the plot and discussing, the endings and shit like the ending and shit like that. Like, Pamela Voorhees' head coming off. That, didn't look too real, the head, but it wasn't on the screen for very much. And for its day, it was a big deal. So, man, like, those death scenes are really fucking cool. Even, like I said, even when I watched it at the time, in like 99, and it set the stage for the series, obviously. A lot of what I'm going to be saying is probably shit that you've probably seen on other series discussing, or shows and docs discussing the series. So some of it might not be news to you, but if you aren't well versed in the realm of horror movies, and particularly Friday the 13th, this may be news to you. But it really set the standard for certain tropes that you see nowadays, and even stuff that I guess now would be, those tropes would be, be meta commentary within series or within the show or movie that you may be watching. It's like the body coming, from above, hanging upside down. The discovery of the bodies. The hanging upside down bit, they bit that off of Halloween. But the discovery of all the dead bodies towards the end of the movie, I would say, they probably started that, if I'm not mistaken. In the movie, you see everyone get wiped out, but you don't see where Pamela, puts the bodies. Up until towards the end, when Alice, I believe is her name, is running around trying to escape from the murderer, she stumbles upon the bodies, and then you see them kind of again. So you got to see them die. Some of them you didn't see die. You saw die off screen, or you actually saw them die. But then you get to re-see their dead corpse, so to speak. Nowadays, the movie probably would seem very boring and not suspenseful. The pacing, a lot of it, like I said, these are tropes that are now all too common. So some of the levels of suspense wouldn't be as scary as they would be today. Nowadays audiences know this shit. So it's like, when you watch a movie, when I watch like Psycho, it was tame as fuck. Like, I was like, this isn't scary as shit. Like, why the fuck is this such a landmark movie? But, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the people watching it at the time. So if anyone has never seen the movie Friday the 13th Part 1, and you go to watch it to see some film history, or you want to see, something iconic for its day, if you want to get into the 80s movies and stuff like that, you might not find it scary. Especially because, it's pretty obvious, who's going to die, when they're going to die. It's more, the movie, what it does is, it followed in the footsteps of, what one would call the original slashers, stuff like Halloween, that movie was more about the gore, in the slasher trope. The whole movie series is really about the gore and the kills, more so than plot. It was a basic plot line. And in case anybody didn't know, it did set the stage for the whole "if you sin, you die" motif, but that wasn't the aim of the movie filmmakers.
We're going to play strip Monopoly. I'll be the shoe. Why don't you see if Marcy left any of that grass?
I'm not going to pass go without a glow.
We already rolled for you. You're going last, okay? And community chest cannot give you your clothes back.
When Sean Cunningham originally devised the movie, it wasn't like, hey, let's get kids to fucking do their sin. Let's tell a morality tale of if you fuck and if you do drugs, oh, you're gonna get murdered. That wasn't what they were like going for. They were just trying to show kids, you know, like young adults or whatnot, like just in their natural habitat, which is they tend to like to fuck and get fucked up. That's what a lot of us did at the time when we were, you know, whatever, 18, 19, however old the kids were supposed to be. They're supposed to be camp counselors for setting up a camp to be reopened. So the basic plot is that this camp that the owner owns, that's repetitive. He inherited the camp from his parents, and it was long shut down due to some murders that happened in the 50s, and he was trying to resurrect it, which will come into play. That the resurrection will come into play. But anyway, in part 6. But I'm getting away from my point, which is talking about part 1. Which you'll notice I do that. I'll go off into fucking tangents or whatever. But anyway, so he's trying to resurrect the camp, and so he's brought along the new hired help, the new camp counselors and cooks and stuff like that, to renovate the place and get it set up for the kids that are going to come. And while they're doing that, a murderer is systematically killing them one by one. People call it Camp Blood in the movie because it's cursed.
Camp Blood? They're opening that place again?
It's got a death curse.
Camp Crystal Lake is jinxed. Did Christy tell you about the 2 kids murdered in 58? Huh? Boy drowning in 57? A bunch of fires? Nobody knows who did any of them. In 1962, they was going to open up. The water was bad.
If you haven't seen the movie ever, you know of Jason, though. It's in the cultural zeitgeist at this point. He's an iconic horror movie character in the same vein of the old Universal horror movie Monsters. This movie has not Jason at all in it. He's not in it, and he's not the focal point that you know of. When you first, if you put yourself in the shoes of the original audience of the series, Jason didn't exist. It's a complete mystery as to who the murderer is. In all honesty, you don't know who the killer is. So what you do is you're watching from the killer's point of view. Even the deaths come from the killer's point of view, or just off to the side, to the left or the right of where the killer is. You only see the killer's feet, or shoes, I should say, or hands. So you don't know that it's a woman, for one, and that it's Jason's mother until the very end of the film. So what you do is you're watching these kids get taken down one by one. It's more about the suspense and the death scenes, and then it wraps. Then you find out at the end that it's all has to do with Jason.
Did you know that a young boy drowned? His name was Jason. Jason should have been watched every minute. He wasn't a very good swimmer. Jason was my son, and today is his birthday.
And Jason's death, in the original movie, they didn't have a plan for sequels. Honestly, this was supposed to be for them I think what they called a boilerplate movie or something like that, where basically they wanted to generate some funds so that Sean Cunningham can do some sort of soccer TV series or whatever. He had done some movie and he wanted to make a series based on it, and this was just supposed to generate some money. And what's the easiest thing to do is to let's just slap together a horror movie and popcorn horror movie and make some money. Little unbeknownst to him, this movie was what's going to make his career. Of course, Sean Cunningham had done horror before. He produced Last House on the Left, which was Craven directed, previous to that. So he knew horror. But that wasn't really, he wasn't trying to be a horror movie maker in that sense, is to be like one of the, you know, founding fathers of the modern horror monsters, basically. So Jason was dead in the original movie. When you see him pop up at the end, that was just a last minute gag that they put in, just for one last scare. And it's not supposed to really happen. One theory is that it was a dream sequence, you know, while she was in the canoe at the end, kind of drifted off to sleep, and there was a nightmare's dream thing. Because as you know, in part 2, Jason does come back as an adult. He didn't like die and then grow up dead and then come back to life. He was a human being all the way up until the end of part 4. So the way they got around that, I'll go into when I talk about Jason, the serial killer, I guess, or mass murderer, really. When he was a human being, he was more of a mass murderer than a serial killer, if you want to get technical. But this was just a standalone movie originally, and honestly, for its time, was very revolutionary. Not just in the FX, you know, the death scenes and stuff, but you know, to have a female serial killer running around, you know, that was a shocker. As far as I know, at the time, no one expected it to be a woman.
How are you? Well, I'm Mrs. Voorhees, an old friend of the Christies.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad.
No. Dear, now, look, I can't help you if you don't calm down.
And let alone, you know, a nice motherly character. In fact, when they cast, I forget her goddamn name, because I didn't write this. I know her name. I just fucking am blanking out because I'm an old man. But Pamela Voorhees is the character's name. The actress they cast was, you know, known for, you know, wholesome shit. It'd be like casting, I don't know, like Julie Bowen or something. Her whatever. The blonde mom from Modern Family, I guess, you know, in a horror movie. Although I think she has actually been in a horror movie, so maybe that's a bad example. But future Jimmy will give a better example of what I'm trying to say as far as the equivalent of today, what kind of actress was cast. Because people knew, you know, she was in the movie when you saw the title credits. You just didn't know where she was. You didn't see her at all. So maybe some people watching it was like going, well, where the fuck is, you know, this actress that I'm blanking on? And maybe she's the killer, because you don't see her at all. You don't know it's her. When you see her at the end, you think she might be there to help. And then come to find out, no, she's the murderer. And they get into a fight, and she gets her head chopped off, which is the whole catalyst for the series. This movie set the stage for it, and it set the stage for a lot of copycats in the 80s. There are all these, you know, slasher flicks really were riding the coattails of Halloween and Friday the 13th. Halloween like set the stage for the slasher, and then Friday the 13th created the gore aspect to it. So when you see a, you know, by the numbers kind of horror movie where one by one some, you know, these kids, you know, usually kids like, you know, young adults or, you know, teenagers get murdered one by one in all sorts of neat and inventive ways, it's because of Friday the 13th. And honestly, it really, if you watch it, you know, it holds up for the most part. You know, like I said, when you watch it now in HD, you can see the special effects. But it's still a good movie, I think. If you watch it, you have to watch it within the context, of course, kind of like if you watch Psycho now. It's super tame. I would say probably my favorite death scene would have to be probably a tie between the first girl who gets her throat slashed out in the woods. Annie, I believe, is her name. And Kevin Bacon's character's death, where it comes up. That shit looked so fucking cool. Even watching it like for the first time as an adult in the 90s, I was like, man, that shit fucking holds up, because I was watching it on a regular old ass fucking TV on VHS. It still held up in 1999 or 2000 when I watched it. I only watched bits and pieces of the series growing up as a kid, because I couldn't go see them in the movie theater, obviously, because fuck, you know, I was a kid. My parents were gonna fucking take me to go see a horror movie like that. So I think I watched part 6 as a kid, 9 in its entirety, 7 in its entirety as a kid, and the rest of the series I watched in my 20s in their entirety. But I always liked Jason as a kid because I thought he looked really cool. He was scary. I wasn't like into him, but he really did scare me as a kid. Whereas like Chucky, I didn't scare me. I liked him as a kid. I thought he was really. I thought the series was really cool. So, yeah, that's Friday the 13th. Part 1. I think that's mostly what I can really say about it. I really, I can go into detail about the series, the movie's plot, off the top of my head, but I'm not going to go into that. I'm not going to rehash the plot beat by beat, because who wants to watch that fucking shit? So I think we'll call it here. Friday the 13th part 1, and this will be part 1 of the whole series I'm going to cover about it, and hopefully you found this entertaining or informative, and hopefully you go watch the first one. I always watch Friday the 13th as when it's a Friday the 13th, the calendar year, I used to watch the whole series front to back. As much as I could within the day. Now I'm introducing them to my wife, so each time the calendar date falls on a Friday the 13th, we watch one of them. We're at part 9 now, although we should have watched part 9 last year when Friday the 13th came up, but we didn't for whatever reason. So she owes me one. She's not really into horror much at all, although she plays really gory fucking games, but horror movies she's not into, so she puts up with them for me, God love her. So you owe me a Friday, honey. The next one we'll watch probably part 9 and 10, Jason X, together, back to back, which is, that's an interesting one. But anyway, so yeah, Friday the 13th part 1, besides the death scenes and the big reveal at the end, those were the big hallmarks of that series, and what set the stage for the series to come. And yeah, go check it out, and go to rubycinders.com or come by our shops on Instagram and Facebook and pick up some Friday merch and other stuff that we have. We have a whole bunch of different shit that you might like. So that's about the size of a big house. Peace.